We're in a state of disease as a nation. Mental health, physical health, emotional, spiritually, we're in a disease state right now. We all know it, and we can look at the statistics. We have more maternal deaths per capita in this country than any other developed nation. 54% of children in this nation have an autoimmune disorder. We have to ask ourselves, what's happening here? What is it? What system led us here? Our bodies are attempting to adapt. They're attempting to adapt to this petrochemical medicine. And we're having all sorts of inflammatory reactions, immune responses, maladaptive immune responses. And we're having this at such a high rate right now, a much higher rate than any other country on earth. And what is unique about our country is that we have been focused on petrochemical medicine for over 100 years. And now it's time to change. We all know that our past decisions lead us to our present state, right? And so we have to look at what our present state is in this country. Our present state is we have 54% of children in this nation have an autoimmune disorder, asthma, allergies, all sorts of things, right? And we have obesity rates fly through the roof. 70% of adults, right, are obese and overweight. Okay, so we look at all of these disorders that people are facing, that we in our country are facing right now, and we look at it and we say, what are our past decisions? What is it? What system led us here? What decisions led us here? What mode of medicine led us to this state of health in our current state right now?
You are Dr. Ron Dummar, Community Health and Wellness. This is the Be Well Now podcast.
Welcome, everybody.
I'm Nick, the curious patient. We're here to talk about the politics of medicine. I mean, synthetic pharmaceutical medicine, they all kind of come together. Synthetic pharmaceutical drugs, that's medicine, right? Like, I had this thought the other day, like, what is medicine really? Because to me, and I get that I'm not a doctor and you are, but I think that medicine is so much more than something that comes in an orange container from Walgreens.
Mm-hmm. And you get your little bottle, and
my daughter was playing doctor
good.
In your little office, and I said I came in with back pain. She's like, let's play doctor. She's like, we don't really have anything for that. And I'm like, well, how about a headache? And she's like, here's your medicine, and it was a pill. She's been taught by the system. She's just socialized into the whole thing.
Yeah, she's been taught.
So synthetic chemicals, pharmaceuticals, is that medicine?
That is a really good question, right? It's the medicine that we've learned as a society to accept.
Yes.
We've accepted it culturally, that is medicine. We believe it to be so. We expect it to be so. But what we want it to do for us and the results that we often get from it are not the same. Okay?
We could talk about that, or we could talk about how we got here. Obviously, there are times when, a pharmaceutical is like an appropriate choice and it helps somebody out. You're not totally anti, right? Can you explain your thoughts on being a functional medicine doctor, and you've got your background in Chinese medicine, you're an acupuncturist, chiropractor. I mean, you wear many hats. And before we get into this, I just think people may benefit from a little bit of a backstory from you.
Sure, that's helpful. You did a good job with it right there. That was nice. My background is in physical medicine, chiropractic, Chinese medicine. I actually studied them at the same time. I did my acupuncture and Chinese medicine courses, herbal medicine courses by night, and my chiropractic physical medicine courses by day. And so ultimately that's what I did. That was my original training. I did a lot of brain injury traumatology work. I've since begun to specialize more into functional medicine and looking more at the holistic approach to care, and always wanting to find that root cause and being able to go upstream as much as possible so that we can help patients really identify what are the causative factors in their dysfunctional health. And so I guess what this podcast is about today really is looking at our nation, right? Looking at our nation and going upstream and saying, we're in a state of disease as a nation. Mentally, mental health, physical health, emotional, spiritually, we're in a disease state right now. We all know it, and we can look at the statistics that bear it out. We have more maternal deaths per capita in this country than any other developed nation. The closest one, I think we have like 22 per 100,000. The closest one is 3 we have to ask ourselves, what's happening here, and what are they doing that we're not, and how can we learn from that? And the reality is, other systems are integrating as opposed to excoriating and eliminating. There is, again, this sets us up for the politics of medicine. Politics is often, I look at politics more often than not about a fight, right? It's always about somebody saying, my way is the better way. This way is the best way to do it, not your way. So it's all about turf. Right. In medicine. The politics of medicine is, we have a system set up. This is our way of doing it. We got to the top, and we want to maintain our turf. We don't want anyone to chip into that. And that is, in a nutshell, what has happened that has brought us to the current state of illness in our nation.
So what do you think the most interesting thing to mention first is, in terms of how we got here, and whether there's even another way is something that a lot of folks may not even consider?
Well, I think for a lot of people, if you look back, late 1800s, early 1900s, for a lot of people, they would think, wow, that's a long time ago. But it's actually a really short period of time. We're talking about 100 years gets us back to 1920, right? That's before the Great Depression. So there's a lot of things that have happened historically between 1920 and even the 2000.
And the first thing I think of is all the advancements. We're not going to die from certain things because we have new technology and new medicine.
Computers, chips.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that people don't die now from very serious things that they would have.
Infections being a very big contributory factor there, that we have a lot fewer people dying from infections. They're dying from other things. They're dying from inflammatory conditions. They're dying from autoimmune conditions. They're dying from these chronic illnesses, right? And for the most part, they're dying from heart disease, cancers, and the third leading cause of death is pharmacology, pharmaceutical medicine. How so? So that is the third leading cause. And you can look it up. It's the third leading cause of people taking medications. Synthetic chemical medication is among the third leading causes of death. That's pretty stark. And so we have to look at that and say, okay, what's happening? Are patients, is it because of are people overdosing? Are they taking too many? Are they taking it inappropriately? Why is it that this is happening or occurring? And so it's something we have to really ask ourselves and say again, why is it that why do we as a culture feel like this is the predominant mode of medicine? This is the king of medicine, is what we believe. We believe that. Why? So I'm going to take you back into the 1900s, okay. Late 1800s, early 1900s. And if I could paint a picture for you, it would look like this, the predominant healthcare modus operandi that you would receive if you went to or sought out care from a doctor. It would likely be a homeopath, an herbalist, a chiropractor.
Really?
Yep, an osteopath. That's who you would receive care from.
And that wasn't
midwife.
That wasn't as, I don't want to call it fringe because it's not fringe, because I know chiropractic is covered by insurance and natural medicine is becoming more mainstream, but it still feels like that's a little bit out there for a lot of people.
In the early 1900s, the whole nation for births, we were covered by midwives. 50% of births nationwide were covered by midwives.
So 50% of births were in people's homes?
Midwives were the ones who were overseeing them. Okay. Whether they were in a hospital or in a home, it was a midwife that was overseeing it.
Versus
versus an OB.
OB, okay.
Yep,
okay.
Yep. A medical doctor, trained medical doctor. So, but in the state of New York, there was a period of time when it was closer to 90% of birthing mothers actually had a midwifery support. Okay. Well, at some point, that completely changed, and now people almost feel like going to a midwife is like stepping off the boat, like walking the plank. Like, holy cow, if I go to a midwife, that's like changing my religion or my faith. And people literally feel that way because they're so
what if something goes wrong?
The
like in the hospital, they'd be able to take care of me. That's what I think.
That's what people think. Yeah.
Well, and there could be times where there's a lot of really serious complications where you try the thing at home and then you end up in a hospital. That happened to a friend of mine.
Oh, 100%.
And if we had done ours I think of the advancements and I'm like, thank God my daughter was okay, and her mom survived. Like,
yeah, and then you have to reconcile.
I don't know.
But you have to reconcile that too with the fact that in our country we have a 32% base, that's a 32% average C-section rate. And the World Health Organization said all things being equal, if you look at equivalent and assume based on the way birth generally goes and how many births throughout the world really should be considered urgent or emergent, it should be your level of C-section rate really should be about 5%. And if you look at these other countries, these developing nations, most of them have their C-section rates right around 3 to 8%. So the question is, why are we in the United States taking that and creating ultimately a situation in our hospitals and with our mothers, with our birthing moms? Why are we having C-sections at a rate way higher than the rest of the world? What's happening?
Well, America's the greatest country in the world, so we do everything perfectly.
Yeah, so we just have to cut them open. We have to cut those babies open.
That's not the best way to do it? I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about
all I'm saying is
a woman or giving birth.
All I'm giving you is the statistics, right? Okay. And saying with all things being equal, there should be about a 5% rate of cesarean, right? And so in our country, the question then that you would be asking is, well, are there possibly some cesareans that are not really necessary, that are happening or occurring because maybe it's more comfortable for the physician based on whatever they see? It could be. I don't know. It could also be, you could ask the question, is it possible that the country that we live in is getting a lot more mothers who are metabolically unwell? And when you compare their metabolic health to other countries, right, and their metabolic health, they start that process metabolically unwell. Therefore, they can't get through the process without having a C-section because they're unwell to start with.
Okay, so we're going
Those
back.
are both options.
Yeah.
But we have to look at them.
And the overall health issues that we have now as a nation are clear. And 100 years ago, more midwives in hospitals.
More midwives.
Okay, so things
had a lot
looked
more
a lot
midwives.
different.
So
are we romanticizing the past though? Didn't people die of things that they easily could have?
Largely infections.
Largely infections. Okay.
Yep.
There was a lot of bleeding in the hospital on for the birth of one of my kids. And
sure.
It was like, oh my gosh, what if I did this at home? Like I would not. I mean,
I'll tell you what, because we did ours at home.
Okay.
And my wife, and again, this is not hasn't meant to be about birth or anything, but you asked the question.
Yeah.
And my wife happened to have lost some blood as well, quite a bit of blood, and she fainted in my arms. And so we were able to revive her there on the site as well, and the midwife, and she was able to put an IV in and everything and rehydrate. And so yes, the fact of the matter is there are things and complications that do occur in birth, right? But it depends on who you've chosen as your care provider and what type of experience you choose to have. And we have, we can deliver in our home, which is our natural environment, or we can choose to deliver in the hospital, which is, well, not really our natural environment. And we think that we're there because we're concerned about how quickly we can actually get emergent care. But then we have to ask the question, how long does it take to get the operating room ready? So they're not really going to have the operating room ready until that moment when it's like, okay, the care provider says, boom, we need to make the call, right? So the question is, you're on floor whatever or room whatever, how long does it take to get everything prepped at the OR and ready for you, and then to get you set and moved into a chair and then wheeled down to that area, right, where you need to be? How long does it take from the moment that your care provider says, okay, we need to make the call, to the moment that you're in there at the OR having surgery? And there's a little bit of flex here, but the average is typically between 25 and 40 minutes.
Really? I thought it was just like instantaneous.
I know. It's like House MD or whatever, right? Or Grey's Anatomy, and it's like, bam, it happens right now. Now, could there be some luck that happens or some really fortuitous opportunities where it's like, hey, this is ready and we're ready now, and boom, we get you over there? Yeah, that can happen. But on average, it takes 25 to 40 minutes to actually get the patient from their room when they're in the hospital to the operating room. if they need a C-section. So let's say you're at home and you happen to call, say, we need an operating room. Okay, it'll take 20 to 40 minutes. Can you get to the hospital? Are you within 20 to 30 minutes of a hospital? If so, there's very little difference between birthing at home under the direction of a midwife and birthing in the hospital, because I'll answer this question for you by asking you, who is it that oversees your birth in the hospital? Is your OB there?
Not always.
No.
It's
he's not there until he absolutely needs to be.
Yes.
Right? And he's overseeing how many births at once? Multiple. So who's managing it? Is it a midwife? Sometimes it's a certified nurse midwife, but then she would manage it start to finish all on her own without the OB, and the OB would be a backup to her, right? Or him, certified nurse midwife. The other thing that's happening is it's likely managed by the nursing staff. So the nursing staff, they're taking all these numbers, they're making sure that you receive all sorts of, modalities, so that we're tracking what's happening with the fetus, and then they're feeding this to staff, to the doctor on staff, or to whoever's there, right, or to the OB, and then they're determining, okay, what do we do with it? We're monitoring, how is this going, and is it in need of being an emergency C-section?
Right.
So then your doctor is out at the he's playing golf, right? And then he gets the call that he needs to come in for a C-section.
Okay.
How long does it take him to get to the hospital?
I mean, they have more than one doctor there usually.
Well, yes, that could happen too. It can be that, right? But what I'm saying is, even
it's a long response.
There's a process.
Yeah.
There's a process, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. There's multiple doctors. There's plenty of staff, and oftentimes people will, when they have an emergency C-section, they'll have a C-section under the care of someone who wasn't their chosen care provider,
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
Because of that emergency. I'm not saying that.
No, that's what happened to us.
Yes.
It wasn't our OB, it was someone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's oftentimes the way it works. But again, just to get you from point A to point B, it's going to take 20 to 40 minutes, 25 to 40 minutes.
I'm just trying to say, should we glorify the past or not? And it sounds like it's a little more complicated than I thought it was in terms of medical care.
It is a little more complicated.
And today. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people had midwives.
Yes.
How much more do we have to cover? Because we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Oh, we did good. That was fun.
Cool.
Okay,
all right,
so here's the thing, though. A lot of people have midwives. We're trying to give you a situation between, or how it felt. You would go to a homeopath, you would go to an herbalist, you would go to a chiropractor, you'd go to all of these different types of providers. It was very diverse. The medical landscape in the early 1900s, late 1800s was incredibly diverse. We were the luckiest people on earth to have such diversity. And who was also there?
Weren't there a lot of quacks selling snake oil?
There were also allopathic medicine doctors, right? Allopathic medicine doctors were also among that group. You could go
Which
to
is like
them.
a traditional medicine, like,
Traditional.
what do you call allopathic?
We're the traditional, but
what does allopathic mean?
Allopathic means the chemical, synthetic, pharmaceutical. They called them at the time like the professional medical doctors, you could say.
So they were another option.
They were another option at the time, too.
Were they the dominant option at the time?
No.
Okay.
No, they were very, very small.
Really?
In fact, yeah, they were very, very infrequently utilized, because the homeopaths, the herbalists, the chiropractors, all of these other doctors were way more prevalent. There were thousands of them everywhere, right? And there were like somewhere around, 15, 17, something like that, 1,000 homeopaths around the early 1900s. Can you imagine that? 17,000 homeopaths. That's a lot for such a small, the population was very small at that time.
Okay.
So they were covered in that way. These are the type of, when you look at a lot of people, you think, okay, I like to go to nutrition. I like to use foods. I like to really be health conscious. We think of like homeopathic medicine. We think of nutrition. We think of functional medicine. These are the things that we think about, right? When we think nowadays of what it means to be healthy, or to seek out a health coach or a healthcare provider that's going to push me and support me in a healthy way.
Right.
Some people say, oh, that's rabbit food, right? They'll be like, oh, you're going to go to your rabbit food doctor or whatever, right? But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about healthy living, optimized living, okay? So that's the way it was. The health landscape was so diverse. Then there was a group of individuals who saw the diversity, And they saw the problem, and they knew that these professional medical doctors were not able to get in. They weren't able to get a foothold. They were trying to get a foothold in the market and trying to figure out how could they do that, right? A lot of these professional medical doctors were trained in Britain. They were British trained doctors. And someone in the government, someone in the brand newly formed at this time, AMA, spoke to some great big mogul titans in the world at the time. Their names were Carnegie and Rockefeller. Some of you may be familiar with them.
Yeah.
And so Carnegie said, okay, and both of them said, okay, we'll help you with this. Rockefeller was an oil baron. Like, he was really into petrochemicals and making a lot of money off of that. And he saw in his mind a great big ticket item of, if we can push all of medicine and all practitioners and everyone in the United States to be utilizing petrochemical, oil-based medicine, that's a treasure trove that would never end. Imagine that, right? And then Carnegie said, you know what, we have to make this more worthwhile for us. And so what we're going to do is the way we do this is we have to create a monopoly of sorts without it being a monopoly, right? It almost has to be a government-approved monopoly, right? And so he said, this is how we're going to do this. We can't make it a monopoly, but what we can do is we can make requirements so strict and so stringent upon all of these schools that are out there training these homeopaths and chiropractors and naturopaths and all these people right now. We can make things so strict and make it so focused that they can't possibly live up to them. Okay? So then they hired William Flexner. They hired him, he was an educator at the time, to write a report, to go around and determine what were the things that needed to happen or to occur in order for us to say that this school was an approved medical school.
Oh, that wasn't a thing?
And only approved medical schools would get funding. And so those medical schools that received funding, you could imagine after this point, you're getting all this funding, you're able to buy books, you can bring in more students. They also said some of the requirements, they said, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you are tied to a large university. So you have to be connected to a large university. If you're not connected to a large university, we're not going to have anything to do with you. We're not going to support you. Well, a lot of these homeopathic schools, naturopathic schools, herbalist schools, right? A lot of these schools were privately owned, privately operated, family owned, family operated, small businesses, you could say, right? What they did overnight is put them out of business. Almost overnight, 2/3 of all medical schools, when the Flexner report came out, 2/3 of all medical schools, all health wellness schools in general, closed.
Around when was this? Like when?
This was like that came out in 1910.
So the landscape starts to shift.
So in the early 1900s, there were probably 25 homeopathic schools. By 1939, there were 2.
How many are there now?
There's more now, which is good because we're surging back, and they've figured out kind of how to make it in a private enterprise and how to try to take advantage of some of the different portions they can of government programs and things like that. But they had a really, really hard time. They had to climb uphill. Okay. But you can imagine that there was a massive head start that was given to these allopathic medicine practitioners and these allopathic medicine schools. And so on top of that, what started happening, like you mentioned, quack, right? What happened is people were invested, money came in, they were flowing into these schools, and they said, okay, we have to protect this. And so what we're going to do is let's hire a propaganda arm. And so Morris Fishbein was hired, and he was given the charge to basically put all these other schools, homeopathic schools, chiropractic programs, everything, he wanted to put them out of business. So his job literally was to excoriate them. And there's a whole court case that you can read. Okay, it's called, Wilk versus, I put a note down here, Wilk versus Where is it? Anyway, there's a whole court case that you can read about.
Okay.
And it will go, what it does is it goes over and describes how the American Medical Association was literally intentionally...
Wilk versus American Medical Association.
Thank you. And forcefully attempting to eliminate chiropractic.
And that was 1976 when they filed this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it had been under assault for a while.
Oh, yeah. For decades. Right? And so this was happening again. And who has all the money?
MDs were prohibited from referring to chiropractors. They were discouraged from even associating with them. The AMA's principle of medical ethics explicitly forbade collaboration with what they called unscientific practitioners.
Yeah.
So economic warfare, I guess you could say.
Oh, 100%. And so this is politics, right? We're talking about the politics. And this is really turf war, right? They're upset because chiropractors are still, even at this point, they don't have funding, right? They're not supported by the government. They've been told that they're quacks. They're being told that they don't have any place in society. Ultimately, a lot of chiropractors are going to jail. They're serving time.
Still?
No, they were at this time.
Okay,
this time. I mean, we're talking about not very long ago. We're talking about the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? They were going to jail and serving time for literally practicing their medicine, for practicing chiropractic.
Wow.
And they had to, in certain court, when they were taken to court, they had to come up with a variety of different reasons. It's like word salads about why they weren't practicing medicine, because only one type of doctor was allowed to practice medicine, right? So they couldn't say that they were practicing medicine. But, they were inviting into the body the innate force, and they had to come with all these other explanations, and they were making corrections to the spine to improve the patient's health, and they weren't diagnosing, and they weren't practicing medicine. But that's a bunch of bullcrap, because the fact of the matter is, for so long, for so many years, chiropractors have been trained as physicians, as doctors, to practice medicine the way that it was designed by God, by this earth, right? In nature. So using the elements of the earth, using plants, using minerals, using supplements, chiropractors and homeopaths and naturopaths have been trained to do that. And we've been doing it for generations. And they're still to this day, especially in the state of Texas, there's a lot of legal battles that are going back and forth where the Texas Medical Association is attempting to restrict the scope of these type of practitioners, even to this day. These things need to stop. What needs to happen is medicine needs to realize either we're offering a value to the people or we're not, and then stand by it. And if you can't stand by it without trying to pigeonhole and take someone else to court and fight against someone and point the blame at them and say, they're not practicing medicine, we need to put them in jail. If you can't stand behind your own product, then you need to change. And that's what needs to happen in our country. We need to come forward to a place where we say we can work together. We're not excoriating medicine at large. We're not saying that there's no place. We're not saying there's no place for chemical medicine. It just has to take its rightful place. It has to be willing to take its rightful place. And it has to be willing and able to allow all of these other practitioners to take their rightful place also.
I just had this vision of us like bowing down at the altar of like petrochemical medicine.
Yeah.
And saying like, you are the almighty way to like heal me. And I feel like the almighty is the almighty way to heal, and like things that come from God, source, whatever you want to call it. It's like, and you have pictures of plants all over your office because I believe you said before you think everything probably can be solved by things that grow on God's green earth. Like, what are your thoughts on the plants? Oh,
100%. The plants have everything that we need. The fact of the matter is that petrochemical medicine, pharmaceutical medicine is constantly studying these formulas and constantly studying these plants. And they're doing it because they're attempting to identify what parts of that plant are the active ingredients that are working, because they see it working to heal illness and disease, to help patients recover from ailments. So then they look at that plant and say, how do we turn it into a chemical petromedicine drug that we can reproduce and sell at whatever price we want? We set the price wherever we want to. because it's not a plant-made thing. It's not man. It is man-made. It's not made by the earth. Therefore, they can just determine whatever they want it to be. But if something's made, it's finite, it's made on earth, then it can only have a specific value that is determined based on the quantity that it can be produced at, right? So we have to be careful. And I err always on minimally invasive first. What do we know about the relationship of certain products, certain plants? We've been eating plants since the creation, right? We've been eating plants since the creation. And sure, we've eaten animals as well, okay? But this is a new start for our bodies. Our bodies are attempting to adapt to it as well. Not very well, I would say, but they're attempting to adapt to this petrochemical medicine. And we're having all sorts of inflammatory reactions, immune responses, maladaptive immune responses. And we're having this at such a high rate right now. And it's happening in our country at a much higher rate than any other country on earth. And what is unique about our country is that we have been focused on petrochemical medicine for over 100 years. And now it's time to change.
And that's a great way to kind of bookend this conversation, is like, we started with that we're having a lot of dis-ease and issues. We kind of went back through the history. I don't think we kind of fulfilled this court case, though. The court actually ordered the AMA to cease its anti-chiropractic propaganda. Generations of Americans grew up thinking chiropractic care was quackery. I would argue there's still a lot.
It's still there.
The residue, the echo, the shadow of that is still in the culture.
Yeah, it's still there. There are still a lot of people who, again, like I said, imagine I described earlier, you feel like choosing a midwife or choosing a chiropractor or choosing a homeopath or a naturopath. You feel like that's changing your religion. Like it's stepping off the boat, like you're leaving society, right? When you do that. That's a choice. It's a choice. And your choice ultimately is, I choose to be less invasive in my approach to healthcare.
It's more normal to go out to the bar and get drunk with your friends than it is to say, I actually don't like going to the doctor at the hospital with the MD next to his name that gives me 10 minutes and is ready to Prozac without knowing anything about me when I went in for, it's like, I don't know. It's, that feels more alternative or off the beaten path to be like, I actually go to see Dr. Ron Dummar at Community Health and Wellness, where there's a holistic approach and we focus on what's up or downstream, what could be causing this. And we go through some like minimally invasive options. Maybe let's get a blood draw and let's look at supplements, whatever it is that you do here. And it's not my, my practice. So you can chime in. It's like, it feels very other to me to explain that to someone. I feel like I have to make an excuse for why I choose that versus the guy in the white lab coat.
Yeah, where in reality, it should be your first option. Like, to eat food, to adapt your food, to adapt your diet, to change the nutrients that you're putting into your body, to change your physiology or adapt to physiology, that should be your first approach, right? But what people do is they're like, oh, just hang in, just do whatever they want. I'll just live, I'll go to the bar, I'll live however I want to, until bam, they're in a situation that is so severe that they feel like then they have to go there. Well, even in those somewhat severe situations, we're still able to help a lot of people. But there are absolutely those situations that call for our modern medicine. And that's just the way it is. And that is what they're good at. They're great at bringing you back to homeostasis, but they're not really great at moving the needle to your health and wellness, to your optimization. It's like, when do I get off of this? You just put me on this. When do I stop? Well, when your numbers hopefully improve. Good question. Most of my patients come to me and say, the doctor basically said that I'll be on this for the rest of my life. And granted, I give you that there are some things, some medications and some conditions that will require that. But by far, the large majority are not that way. And so there should be a plan. There should be an exit strategy. Okay, we got on this petrochemical medicine. We did everything we could to support Rockefeller, and now we need to get off of it, right? So how can I get off of it? How can I optimize myself? And part of that plan may include a homeopath, a naturopath, a chiropractor, some natural health physician. Okay? It could include that.
Well, this is just the beginning of a conversation. We love the conversation with everyone out there. If folks want to have that conversation with someone at your clinic, with you, they could actually find you online, call your office if they're local to Utah, if they're not local to Utah. What would you tell folks if they're like, hey, I like this guy. I just found out about him. I'm all in. I've listened to this whole podcast. Maybe this is going to help me in my journey. Yeah,
I would say if you're interested in what we're talking about, I would check out some of our other podcasts first. And then I would also reach out. You can call us. Our phone number, 435-657-3696. You can give us a call and schedule a consultation. We're happy to do a consultation with you. You can also check out our website at chwheber.com. That's Heber. So chwheber.com. And you can also check me out on Instagram, Dr. Ron Dummar. That's Dr. Ron Dummar.
Dummar.
Dummar. Double M as in Mary.
Another episode of the Be Well Now podcast presented by Community Health and Wellness in the books. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.